In the Upper East Side, Mrs. Buck announced a reward of $10 million for any woman who could turn her son straight. I was tempted by the money and tried every trick in the book to seduce the young master. At first, he was indifferent, but later he was so focused on me that he even deleted all his male friends from Wicket. Mission accomplished. I planned to take the money and run, but the young master cornered me at the airport. He used his tie to bind my wrists, sneering, "When I was kissing you, why didn't you say you like men? Now see for yourself just how straight I am." While I was selling starch sausages at the school gate, 3 burly bodyguards in black grabbed me and dragged me into a car. When the hood was removed, I found myself face to face with Mrs. Buck. Her son, Armstrong Buck, was the most famous heartthrob at our university, handsome and tall, making everyone want to sleep with him. "You're quinoline," Mrs. Buck said, examining me. "According to my sources at the school, my son looked at you for a few seconds at the gate last time. That means he's interested in your looks. Your task is to seduce him and turn him straight." I was shocked and wide-eyed. The young master really is. Suddenly, the burly man behind Mrs. Buck cracked his knuckles ominously. My neck went cold. I realized I might be at risk of being silenced for knowing this family secret, but as an ordinary person, I decided to resist the evil capital power. "You can't insult me like this. I'm not the kind of person who sleeps around with men. I absolutely will not." Mrs. Buck interrupted me. "$10 million, though $1,000 is a lot." I couldn't. I suddenly looked up, astonished. $10 million. I jumped to my feet, standing tall, and saluted. "Don't worry, boss. I'll definitely complete the task and won't let you down." Even though people should have integrity, integrity doesn't come cheap. I can't afford it. Once I get that $10 million, I won't need to sell starch sausages anymore, and won't have to deal with the smell that makes me chased by dogs. Back in my dorm, I spent 3 days and nights binge-watching makeup tutorials on YouTube. When I finally finished my makeup, my roommates mocked me, saying I looked like a dim blonde with big breasts. I was struck by a realization. Yes, I have big breasts. How could I have forgotten that advantage? I thanked them sincerely. "Thanks. You're a real help on my path to wealth." I appeared at the basketball court in a push-up bra, waist-cinching tank top, and a short skirt. Although there are countless beauties at our school, Queen Lytton, was a showstopper. Almost every guy was staring at me. I kept my eyes on my $10 million. Among the crowd, Armstrong Buck stood out, with broad shoulders, long legs, and a chiseled face. He looked cold and unapproachable, but when he saw me, his gaze lingered, and he actually walked over. My heart raced. Oh my God, could it be that he's smitten with me at first sight? As he approached, I cleared my throat and said in the sweetest voice, "Armstrong Buck, are you looking for me?" Armstrong Buck looked down at me, frowned as if conflicted, and then said coldly, "To starch sausages." Damn it, why does the young master also love junk food? As I gritted my teeth and prepared the sausages, I stole glances at Armstrong Buck, who was standing by the stall waiting. He looked aloof, his hands in his pockets, and he was focused on his phone. I handed him the sausages and tried to strike up a conversation. "So, Armstrong Buck, you're so handsome, Mato, you have a girlfriend?" His expression remained indifferent. "No, aren't you considering finding someone?" "I'm not interested in women, of course." Undeterred, I followed him as he was about to get into his Maybach, holding up the sausage machine. "The city inspectors are coming. Can you let me hide for a bit, Armstrong Buck, please? Surely, you don't want to be someone who ruthlessly pulls out sausages." I bent over pleadingly at his car window, my big eyes blinking. Armstrong Buck glanced at me with irritation. When his eyes fell on my open neckline from bending over, he swallowed hard and quickly looked away. His voice was as cold as ever. "Get in, but don't come near me." Just as I was about to thank him sweetly, he added coldly, "And don't speak." I followed Armstrong Buck to a bar. He Saturday in a booth with a group of friends, and I shamelessly Saturday at the edge with my sausage machine. I even managed to sell 10 more sausages, while making a bit of money. I had missed my $10 million. I listened carefully to Armstrong Buck and his friends. "Armstrong, Aaron didn't mean to con you. He was just deceived by that woman, Erin Gregory, the same Aaron who messed with Armstrong Buck." "Oh no, are they rekindling their romance? This could turn into a cliché drama." I moved closer, and despite the noisy surroundings, I caught snippets of their conversation. Erin Gregory was saying, "Armstrong, I wasn't trying to cheat you. I was deceived by that woman after all these years. Can you give me another chance?" I couldn't believe Ida two-timer with the gall to ask for reconciliation. Armstrong Buck looked somewhat conflicted. As expected, he coldly replied, "If you want to come back, we need to set some ground rules." Oh my God, why is he so lead-struck? I was both frustrated and anxious, rushing forward to stand between them. "Armstrong Buck, don't listen to this jerk's lies. He's just trying to fool you. If he's done you dirty once, he'll do it again." Aaron Gregory stared at me for a moment, his eyes lingering on my chest before he managed to look away. Armstrong Buck's face darkened instantly. He yanked me behind him and coldly said to Aaron Gregory, "Get lost." I said, "Get lost?" I put my hands on my hips and said with a smirk, "I'm the one he's currently sleeping with." Aaron Gregory glared at him and said, "So you're the current one he's reporting taxes with? Huh. It turns out you're his new partner and he doesn't need me anymore." "Armstrong Buck, I misjudged you." With that, he stormed off angrily. Armstrong Buck slammed down his wine glass with a thud, turned on his heel, and walked back into the villa. Well, they're not just a broken mirror now. They're shattered glass shards that can't be glued back together. I let out a huge sigh of relief. Making money is really tough. It was clear that Armstrong Buck was very angry, but that was fine as long as I was happy. I grinned and followed him, filling his mind with the idea of ignoring the wayward past. "Can you be quiet?" Armstrong Buck suddenly stopped, and I bumped into his back, which really hurt. "You nearly squashed me." I rubbed my chest and glared at him. Armstrong Buck's gaze inadvertently dropped to my chest, and then quickly looked away. His breathing grew heavier, and his tone was more hostile. "Try following me again, and stay away from me." I was even gentler than customer service, sweetie. After encountering a jerk, it's understandable to be irritable and angry. They say people are most vulnerable and easily moved after emotional hurt. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so I'll give you a big piece of advice, Armstrong. I know you're still a virgin. You're already this old. Is that reasonable? Have you considered that maybe you need to change yourself? Perhaps after trying things with women, you could let go of your twisted past and be reborn. Armstrong Buck's face darkened further as he listened. By the time I finished the last sentence, he was so angry, he laughed. "HMPH, you're quite open-minded. So, mocking me for being a virgin. Looks like you're quite experienced." I felt a bit embarrassed, but stood my ground. "Well, of course, I'm skilled at this. Do you want to try with me?" Armstrong Buck's eyes were playful but also cold. "Try how?" I couldn't help but blurt out, "Just try it. Aren't you a man? With such a manly appearance, you can't possibly be, as expected. Men can't handle being provoked." As soon as I finished speaking, Armstrong Buck grabbed my waist and pressed me hard against the wall. As an adult, it was the first time I'd been so close to a man. He obviously didn't smoke and was extremely clean, with a fresh minty scent. The collar of his shirt slid down, and his prominent collarbone was so sexy, I wanted to lick it. Such a perfect, handsome guy is really a pity. In that moment, I felt that bending him straight was not just for $1 million, but for the benefit of women everywhere. "Dare to say I'm Armstrong?" Buck looked down and sneered. "You have more courage than your chest is big." I honestly shook my head. No, I'm sure you're not." He was clearly upset, which meant he was being called out. Of course, would make him unhappy. Armstrong Buck's face softened a bit. He leaned closer, his hot breath on my face. "Are you experienced? Why don't you make a move?" I was tense under his gaze, but didn't want to be looked down upon. So, I wrapped my arms around his neck, stood on my tiptoes, and boldly kissed him, but I was too short and missed his lips. Instead, I ended up kissing Armstrong Buck's Adam's apple. He seemed to make a muffled sound. Before I could react, he pinched my face and kissed me fiercely. This time, it was my turn to make a sound. At first, it was just his lips against mine, cold and soft, making my heart race and my head spin. But soon, he started to tangle his lips with mine. I was almost in tears from the kiss, confused and disoriented, and ended up on the bed. My top was kissed off. I used to think Armstrong Buck's indifference was due to a complete lack of interest. Now I realize I was wrong. Men really are like sports fans. Those bossy novels are not wrong. But Armstrong Buck was just playing. He didn't shoot even after I removed my skirt. He put it back on for me and walked away with a tent in his pants. Before leaving, he wrapped me up in the blanket. I finally experienced what it was like to be returned unopened. I thought he might have a hard time accepting the change from a straight guy to a gay one, but it turned out I was wrong. 2 days later, Armstrong Buck invited me to the villa again, carrying a big bag. I thought he had bought something nice for me, but when I opened it, I found 3 boxes of extra thin condoms and several Japanese DVDs. Turns out, he'd been catching up on missing knowledge. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over me. Armstrong Buck began unbuttoning his shirt and said, "Ready? I'm going to show you what kind of man I am. I'll show you just how fierce a virgin can be." I widened my eyes. "Wait, I just said a few words, and you're all defensive now. Is this how a man should act?" As soon as I finished speaking, Armstrong Buck pounced on me. I finally understood why he had prepared so many DVDs. He intended to perform each scene one by one. College students are scary. Their energy is even more intense than Koreans who don't sleep. I spent 3 days and nights in that villa, trying every position imaginable. After that, who would still want a virgin? However, after our first time, Armstrong Buck pointed at the bloodstains on the sheets and coldly sneered. So, you've been around. It's so hard to even write a bit. What a novice. I was exhausted from his relentless activity and retorted angrily. Yes, you're not a novice. You were at it for minutes on your first try. The condoms you used must be regretting ever being made. Armstrong Buck's defenses were shattered again. From then on, he forced me to use a stopwatch each time, never less than an hour, and demanded that I praise him. So childish. That's how Armstrong Buck and I went from classmates to living together. The villa became our hideout. I suspected his mother had placed many spies around him. After our first overnight stay, I received an advance payment from Mrs. Buck, $3 million. I had never seen so much money in my life. After counting the zeros several times and checking my bank account repeatedly, I was sure it was real. When I was 7, my parents died from a boiler accident, and we only got a $200,000 compensation, all of which was taken by my uncle's family. Mrs. Buck also said that if I could stabilize my relationship with Armstrong Buck and make him completely straight, she would give me the remaining $7 million. I started buying bossy novels for Armstrong Buck to help him experience the touching love between men and women. At first, he was reluctant to read them, so I threatened him by saying I would undergo breast reduction surgery if he didn't. Only then did he reluctantly start reading. After reading a few books, he complained, "What kind of male lead is this? The female lead doesn't want him, and he's on his knees licking her. So pathetic. What a disgrace to us men. And this one, the dumb male lead is so happy, but the female lead only approaches him for money. Laughable. How stupid." I then dragged him to read tragic BL stories and said, "See, when it's men with men, it's often so tragic." I also took up a wedding part-time job and used the opportunity to show him various weddings. "Look, men and women together are so happy." Finally, I asked Armstrong Buck, "During this time, have you felt the beauty of women?" He pondered for a moment and said seriously, "It feels troublesome. It's more comfortable with men." I was so angry that I ignored him for 3 days. But I felt that Armstrong Buck had indeed become straighter, because several times during our sage time in bed, Aaron Gregory called him. He always ignored the calls. Once, he even replied to Aaron Gregory with a text, "I won't forgive you. Don't come back. Let's delete each other's contact." I thought he must still be upset inside. Otherwise, why would he mistakenly type rich instead of reconcile? So I took extra care of him. I cooked and did his laundry when he came home late sometimes. I even gave him a massage and added, "So, isn't it better with a woman?" I felt that Armstrong Buck was being brainwashed by me. Sometimes, when he saw me soaking my feet, he'd say, "Women's feet are so nice, small and smooth. Makes me want to do something," even though it was a bit perverted, but at least he's straight. Time passed like this for over half a year. By the senior year's first semester, everyone was busy with internships. I heard Armstrong Buck started his own business in his freshman year, and now his company was on track. I felt the company's name was familiar, but I couldn't recall where I had seen it. We didn't meet every day like before. With everyone busy, we barely saw each other for a month. One time, after more than a week without contacting me, I called him. The phone rang for a long time. His female secretary answered, "Hello, Armstrong is drunk. If you need anything, you can leave a message, and I'll pass it on." I was stunned when I realized what was happening. I hung up in a hurry. "Quinolyn, what are you doing? Are you missing him?" In our line of work, falling in love with a client is the worst mistake. I slapped my face hard to wake up. I sat alone on the bed, where we used to sleep. After thinking about it, it actually felt pretty good. He was Armstrong Buck. He wouldn't like starchy sausages anymore. He didn't need me anymore. After coming to terms with it, I stopped thinking about him. I focused on applying for schools abroad and various part-time jobs to earn money. During my free time, Armstrong Buck would occasionally text me, "Dee, check out your chest. I'm tired. Want to rest on it." No response. "Isn't it said that women are best? What are you doing?" I couldn't comfortably say what I was doing because I was meeting with his mother. Mrs. Buck said, "You're doing well. My son is now less resistant to the topic of marriage. He even mentioned he might get married in the future." Then, Mrs. Buck's expression turned troubled. "But I absolutely won't agree to your marriage with him. You haven't been thinking about it, have you?" Of course, I hadn't. I was just about to reassure her when I heard Mrs. Buck say sharply, "You better not. You're not worthy of marrying my son. You're an orphan, which is so unlucky." The words I was about to say got caught in my throat and turned into the classic line, "Auntie, if you give me $1 million, I'll leave your son." I ended up getting $11 million. Turning the tables on a capitalist is so satisfying. I hired a professional lawyer, and the contract was clear and secure. Mrs. Buck gave me 3 days to leave her son. With the money, I planned to go abroad to relax and also visit the graduate school I was accepted to. On the morning of my departure, I was going to text Armstrong Buck to break up, but then I realized we had never really been together. He had never confessed his feelings or publicly acknowledged our relationship, and we never made any verbal commitments to each other. I hadn't even met his family or friends. All we did together was, well, what we did. What happened in bed wasn't called memories, it was called impulse. The word breakup didn't really apply to us. So I sent, I'm leaving, maybe we'll have a chance to have a meal together in the future. Goodbye, Armstrong. After sending it, I deleted him and turned off my phone before heading to the airport, but in the waiting area, I ran into someone unexpected. Aaron Gregory, facing this ex-boyfriend's ex-boyfriend. I felt a bit awkward and initially didn't want to talk, but Aaron Gregory took the initiative to greet me. You must be Queena, right? I know you, Armstrong's girlfriend. Oh no, please don't let this jerk try to start a fight in public. It's my fault for straightening out his boyfriend. I eyed him cautiously. Do you need something? Aaron Gregory was all smiles. No, just wondering where Armstrong is. Isn't he with you? I was curt. No, why would he be with me? Aaron Gregory, aren't you two together? You're traveling alone, and Armstrong isn't coming. He was talking too much. I ignored him. Aaron Gregory looked at me with some confusion, and suddenly got up to make a phone call. I had a bad feeling he was calling someone to confront me, but I wasn't scared. It's broad daylight. Does everyone think they're royalty? To my surprise, Aaron Gregory did bring the so-called prince. The moment Armstrong Buck appeared, I was thrown into disarray. He was in a sharp black suit, shiny leather shoes, and flanked by several bodyguards in black. The name Armstrong Buck suddenly choked me up. He was no longer the college student buying a couple of starch sausages at the school gate. In college, it was hard to notice the difference. We were just students going to class and eating together. But once out in society, the disparities between people became evident. Status, identity, attire, presence. In just 6 months, the difference was like heaven and earth. Now, he was Armstrong Buck. He was the genuine heir to the top-tier Buck family. Armstrong Buck walked up to me, his gaze sweeping over my luggage, his thick brows furrowing. Where are you going? We hadn't seen each other for a while, and seeing him now, I felt a bit at a loss. He showed me his phone, displaying the farewell text I sent a few hours ago. Queena Litton, I'll give you 3 minutes to explain. Aaron Gregory was still chattering away. Armstrong, is she sneaking off abroad? Does this mean I've done a great job? Can I go back to the company now? Shut up. I was furious and snapped at him. How dare you even bring up reconciliation? You're a cheating scumbag. Armstrong Buck turned to Aaron Gregory and said, Fine. What? Fine. We can reconcile. Watching my hard-earned straight guy about to go back to being crooked was frustrating, especially since Mrs. Buck might want to reclaim the $11 million. I lost it. Reconciliation. Reconciliation. All you think about is reconciliation. Reconcile with your mother. Armstrong Buck, why are you so fixated on the scumbag who played with your feelings? Are you out of your mind? Even if you want to go back, you shouldn't choose such a man. Didn't you feel disgusted while sleeping with him? After I finished, there was a deathly silence. Everyone was staring at us. Aaron Gregory looked bewildered. Who slept with whom? Armstrong Buck's face darkened further than a pot of burnt coal. He stared at me for a long time, then smiled instead of getting angry. I am Queena Litton. Is this why you got close to me? It's my mom who found you. See, this is why he's called the prince's brain works better than others, and his logic is top-notch. If I weren't involved, I want to applaud him, but I had no chance to applaud. Armstrong Buck tore up my plane ticket, and his black-clad bodyguards took my bag and luggage. He easily dragged me out of the airport. He locked me up in the villa, the same villa where we had our wild 6 months. What are you doing, Armstrong Buck? This is illegal detention. He tossed me his phone, then called the police and report me. He grinned wickedly. You better hope I'm locked up for a while. Otherwise, when I get out, I'll make sure to deal with you. I thought about it and asked, isn't this fun? How long do you plan to keep me locked up? It's fun. You show me how domineering men can be in these novels. The male lead locks up the female lead for 3 years. His words left me speechless. Fine. If you're so capable, keep me locked up. Anyway, your mom will come to rescue me. I stood up to go to the bathroom. Armstrong Buck grabbed my wrist sharply. How much did my mom give you? Oh, he wants it back. I instantly became alert. He scrutinized my expression and then said, 1 phone call, and I can find out. Of course, a prince could find out everything in 3 minutes. I said honestly, 11 million. Just 10 million. Queena Litton, is that all I'm worth to you? Is that how little I am in your eyes? That little money. Gently, I broke down. Armstrong, I'm sorry. Even if it's half, a third, or a fifth of 10 million, It's still a huge sum of money to me. It's more valuable than my parents' lives. I didn't say this because it felt too melodramatic. Too unlike my usual cheerful self. I knew I wasn't in the right, but I was still upset. I turned away from him. Armstrong Buck yanked me back. He stared at me with dark eyes, his grip tightening. Money is more important than me. Yes, I met his gaze. Money is more important than anything to me. Armstrong Buck's grip tightened suddenly. I felt a sharp pain in my jaw and wondered if I might develop TMJ disorder. Armstrong Buck's face looked terrifying, and for a moment, I thought he might strangle me, but he didn't. Instead, he lifted me up and roughly threw me onto the bed. His tall frame pressed down on me as he ripped my dress and forcefully kissed me. I knew he was angry and wanted to vent. After all, I did deceive him. I didn't resist. Sleeping with a top-notch handsome guy didn't seem like a loss. I might not get another chance, but my lack of resistance only made Armstrong Buck angrier. Halfway through, he suddenly stood up and stared at me. All right, Queen O'Lytton, you really are something, thinking I'm a free call girl. It seemed like he was the one who had broken down. He slammed the door and walked out. I vaguely heard Armstrong Buck telling the bodyguards at the door not to bring me any food. He wanted to starve me. Starvation was not an option. There was a pond in the villa, and I caught some fish with my bare hands and grilled them in the yard. The smell attracted the bodyguards. I gave each of them a grilled fish. While they were eating, Armstrong Buck unexpectedly showed up. I quickly said, I forced them to eat. Armstrong Buck suddenly broke down again. He sneered, very good. You're so nice to the bodyguards. Huh. He threw away something that looked like a lunchbox and stepped forward, kicking over my grilled fish. I jumped up and glared at him. What are you doing? Wasting food is shameful. And you're not ashamed? Armstrong Buck grabbed my chin hard, forcing me to look at him. His eyes grew dark and intense, and his voice was hoarse and rough. Did you ever like me? Even for a second? Like? I was taken aback. In my 20 years of early mornings and late nights working for tuition, the concept of liking seemed too sacred and distant. To me, it wasn't about liking or not liking, but about whether I could. For example, whether I could afford dumplings, not whether I liked eating them. Liking was something I wouldn't and couldn't consider, so I thought seriously. From Armstrong Buck's recent CEO-like behavior, I didn't really feel any affection. If anything, during our time together, it was more about pleasing him, serving him both in bed and out, all for that 10 million. There were times when we lay on the couch watching TV, with him resting on my chest, lazily saying he didn't want to get up, or after a passionate night, lying in his arms, poking his abs with my finger, him kissing the top of my head, or us eating together, me snatching beef from his bowl while he playfully tossed cilantro into mine, or on a day with no classes, holding hands and walking around the villa. At those moments, I felt happy, and even now, looking back, it was a kind of happiness that still feels good. Is that happiness considered liking? I don't know. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Armstrong Buck stared at me, his lips curling into a smirk. Not at all, huh? That's good. I'll tell you, I don't like you either. What a joke. How could I? You can leave now. Queen O'Lytton, don't let me see you again. Every time I see you, I'll make you regret it. I left quickly. I think we won't see each other again. I successfully went abroad. At first, studying abroad was exciting, but soon I found it quite dull. The food was terrible, and I thought it was a business opportunity. I teamed up with a local guy to open a small restaurant across from the school. We sold all kinds of food. The business was booming. I occasionally thought of Armstrong Buck, especially when I first arrived abroad feeling inexplicably sad when alone at night. That's when I would think of him, thinking of the time we spent together. He smiled as he kissed me with his head down. I hardly remember my parents' faces now. He was the closest person I have been with in recent years, so it's probably normal for me to think about him. Anyway, I decided not to think about him during the day and allow myself to be a bit sentimental at night. But just as I made that resolution, I ran into Armstrong Buck at the store during the day. He came in with a stunning foreign woman with big waves in her hair, and they sat her down to order. The moment I saw him, my brain nearly short-circuited. What was he doing here? When he saw me, his expression was as aloof as when we first met, but he had matured. His face was no longer that of a college student. His features were sharper, and he was even more handsome. As soon as he entered, all the women in the store were staring at him. I calmly took his order and served his food. We didn't exchange a single word. He didn't even glance in my direction. I wondered if he might have forgotten me. I thought that was the end of it, just a minor and inconsequential incident. But later that night, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Armstrong Buck. When I arrived at his apartment, he was curled up on the couch, holding his stomach and looking very uncomfortable. Armstrong, are you okay? I asked. Finally, you're here, he said, opening his eyes to look at me briefly before closing them again. Are you here to do some bedroom exercises with your new boyfriend? I stared at him. You still have the energy to be sarcastic. Looks like your stomach doesn't hurt that much. If he had said on the phone that he was in excruciating pain after eating something from my store, I wouldn't have come all the way to his apartment. Armstrong Buck groaned. It hurts. The food from your place made me sick and I'm still in pain. Don't talk nonsense. My store has been open for so long and no one has ever complained. I knelt down in front of him and touched his stomach. Is it here that hurts? He didn't say anything, just let me touch him. But as soon as I withdrew my hand, he started talking again. I'm going to sue your store for giving me a stomachache and ruining a billion-dollar business deal. Just wait for your place to go under. I was furious. Armstrong Buck, you're just trying to get revenge on me, aren't you? Your stomach pain is probably just an excuse. He suddenly sat up and stared at me with intense anger. I stared back. He must have seen that I wasn't backing down because he lunged at me, pushed me down onto the carpet, and kissed me forcefully. Thinking of the foreign woman he was with, I struggled even harder, but I was no match for him. He had me pinned down and even tore off my dress. But then, he suddenly stopped. I was shocked to find that he was unresponsive. You noticed, he said, I have erectile dysfunction. Armstrong Buck stopped moving, turned his face away, and his voice carried a hint of bitterness. Since you left, it's been like this. I don't feel like a man anymore. The foreign woman, this afternoon, thought I was useless and broke up with me. What's the point of living? You should just leave. I know you're annoyed with me. Suddenly, he climbed off me and headed for the balcony to jump. I panicked and grabbed him. Don't be impulsive, Armstrong Buck. I'm not annoyed with you. I'm not leaving. Just calm down. I managed to convince him to stay. He showed me a report from a specialist. It said that he had developed a psychological aversion to sex after a rough attempt to change his sexual orientation. What do we do? I asked. The medical jargon was too dense for me to understand, and I felt guilty. It was true I had tried to change him, but I never imagined it would have such a terrible outcome. I don't know, Armstrong Buck said, looking despondent. I don't feel anything for either men or women anymore. Really? I asked quietly. So, did you try doing it with Aaron? Did you get any reaction? Armstrong Buck's face darkened, and he closed his eyes as if he was enduring something painful. His words came out slowly through clenched teeth. With him, there was no reaction. I'm useless now. I might as well be dead. No, don't say that. There has to be a way, I said urgently. We'll figure it out together. Don't worry. I take responsibility for this. I'll make it right. As soon as I said that, Armstrong Buck's eyes widened and he stared at me intently. You'll take responsibility for me. Yes? Don't do anything rash. All right then. Let's sign a contract. Armstrong Buck went to his study and came back within minutes with a multi-page contract. I was taken aback. You typed this up so quickly. He coughed. I used voice input. The contract stated that I would help him with his erectile dysfunction and he would pay me $10 million. It felt oddly familiar. I protested. It's been 2 years and inflation has hit. Are you still offering the same amount as you did with your mom? I want a raise. Armstrong Buck glared at me. Quinlan, do you know why I ended up like this? I felt guilty under his glare, biting my lip as I prepared to sign. Then I noticed it wasn't a total of 10 million. It was 10 million per month. I nearly dropped the contract. This was absurdly generous. The Upper East Side's principal finally generous. Fine, I'll make sure to help you regain your manhood. Armstrong Buck and I resumed living together. He bought a beautiful new villa, saying that fresh air would help with his recovery. He also asked me not to wear underwear at home to stimulate his visual senses and help him realign his sexual orientation. I thought helping him recover would be a long and difficult process, but to my surprise, when we had sex for the first time, everything was normal. I asked, Armstrong, isn't this a good thing? Armstrong Buck paused. Oh, maybe being with you triggered some physical memories. Is that so? Yeah? Let's continue. Okay. No, wait. I suddenly said, the medical report said it's because of. Armstrong Buck interrupted me. I know you're disappointed in me. You look down on me. He turned and started heading towards the balcony again. I'm useless. I might as well die. Hey, wait. I rushed to grab him and pull him back to the bed. After that, I stopped asking questions. Each time we had sex, it was normal and there were no issues. He said he consulted a doctor, who mentioned that my hormones might be particularly suitable for him, and he rattled off a bunch of medical jargon in English. It was giving me a headache, so I just stopped listening and didn't want to ask further. As long as he was cured, that was enough. We didn't do it every day. I was busy with my studies, and Armstrong Buck was focused on expanding his company's international market. Time passed like this, day by day. A year later, my savings exceeded 100 million. I felt that it was too much money, and I didn't deserve it. I tentatively asked Armstrong Buck, "It seems like you're cured. Last night after my shower, I saw you had a strong reaction." Armstrong Buck stopped typing. "What do you mean?" "Well, I was thinking, maybe we should terminate the contract. You can't just keep paying me this much." Armstrong Buck was silent for a moment, then suddenly looked towards the balcony. I was flustered. Okay, I was wrong. I won't say anything more. You can keep your money." Another year passed. On the day of my master's graduation, after the ceremony, while still in my graduation gown, Armstrong Buck drove me to get our marriage license. His proposal was rather cheesy. He said, "Miss Queena Linton, I want you to permanently treat me." I broke into a cold sweat. I checked his phone and, sure enough, the latest reading was, "The wife is on top. The CEO husband's gentle kiss." I snapped, "How old are you now? No more reading those domineering CEO novels." But Armstrong Buck had flowers and rings all prepared. I looked at them and said, "Well, you put in some effort." Armstrong Buck looked proud. "After all, marrying a wealthy woman like you, I can't be careless." He really knows how to talk. I do like being called a wealthy woman. I wrapped my arms around his neck and gave him a long French kiss. After getting our marriage license, I still had some concerns. "Will your mother say anything?" Armstrong Buck seemed unconcerned and replied, "She will." As expected, that afternoon, I received a call from Mrs. Buck. Even though Armstrong Buck said I didn't need to worry about his mother, that I could do whatever I wanted, since Buck's family was now under his control, I still couldn't just argue with her. For Armstrong Buck's sake, I had to remain polite. Nervously, I was trying to find the right words when Mrs. Buck's domineering voice came through. "Queena, right, I heard you're my son's wife now. Impressive. You've got some guts. Here's 30 million. Your first child must be a girl." "I don't want a grandson. What if it's another one? Just a waste of money on frivolous things." 30 million? Deal or no deal? Hello. I was left speechless.
Armstrong Buck's monologue. Armstrong Buck was furious. That woman, Queena Linton, took his mother's money, mistreated him, and even thought he was having an affair with his business partner. And as if that wasn't enough, she actually tried to sneak away. For $10 million, she was ready to abandon him. Was he not worth that much? After all the effort he put in bed, and every time she said she liked it, was it all a lie? He was so angry that he confronted her. She didn't hesitate for a second to say that money was more important than him. No beating around the bush. At that moment, he was so enraged he wanted to strangle her. He stormed out and put her under house arrest. But after a few days, he couldn't resist and brought her some food. She, with no heart at all, was in the mood to cook fish. She wouldn't even pretend to cry for him. He asked her if she ever liked him. Queena Linton looked down, lost in thought, but didn't say a word. At that moment, Armstrong Buck felt what true heartbreak was. He told her to get out. He vowed never to see that heartless scammer again. Armstrong Buck thought he hadn't thought about Queena Linton for a long time and hadn't inquired about her. He lit a cigarette and asked his assistant, "How long has she been gone?" The assistant looked at him sympathetically and replied, 2 weeks. Armstrong Buck fell silent. He forced himself not to ask, but whenever he spoke, it had only been a few days. Eventually, even if he didn't ask, the assistant would kindly prepare all the updates on Queena Linton's whereabouts and leave them on his desk, including photos taken by private investigators. The more Armstrong Buck looked, the angrier he got. Queena Linton was doing great without him. She was sharp-witted, and aside from her poor hearing, she was an exceptional businesswoman. Her restaurant was booming. She was still as beautiful as ever, with a big chest and a tiny waist. Armstrong Buck felt like a perverted fool, but if he didn't keep track of her, he wouldn't be able to sleep, constantly thinking about her. First, he ground his teeth thinking about how she deceived him, how she heartlessly left him. He wished he could squash her into nothing, but then he would remember her cuddling up to him, calling his name with a flushed face. It was like a big hand was reaching into his chest, stirring his heart. He missed her, really missed her. Armstrong Buck felt he couldn't wait any longer. It had been more than half a year. What if she got taken by another man while he waited? He made his move. He first went to Queena Linton's restaurant, pretending to run into her by chance. Then he made an excuse about a bad stomach, luring her to his place. She was so focused on her career, she wouldn't want her restaurant to suffer, so he knew she'd come if he said there was a problem with the food. Sure enough, she came. He used his ultimate trick, telling her he had a sexual dysfunction. He even provided a bunch of professional medical reports, all of which he wrote himself. That was enough to fool Queen Elita. Indeed, she was scared. Her little face went as white as a sheet. Seeing her so worried, Armstrong Buck finally felt a bit of relief. She did care about him. After all, he played the martyr, using the lowest tricks to force her to say she would take responsibility for him. From a gentleman's perspective, it was a bit despicable, but Armstrong Buck didn't care. He had to have her. He seized the moment and presented a pre-prepared agreement for her to sign. $1 million a month. He saw Queen Elita's stunned expression, her round, wide eyes looking so comical and foolish, yet still beautiful. He knew Queen Elita liked money. After she went abroad, he had someone look into her background. He learned she had a tough childhood, orphaned, living off charity, and growing up alone with resilience and optimism. So she had no sense of security and would overthink things. She just had never experienced love. Seeing this, Armstrong Buck thought, if she loves money, so be it. After all, he had money. Whatever amount she wanted, he could give her. As long as she didn't leave him, he would work hard to make money and stay the richest man. That way, Queen Elita would never be able to leave him again. He would give her a lifetime of money and love her forever. He would wait for the day she would open her heart and fall completely in love with him. The end. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Stay tuned for the latest content, with new novels updated daily.